Here's a question that I get from business owners and CEOs regularly. The conversation goes something like this. Steve, we have a website. We're posting on LinkedIn and might even be posting some articles to the website. In some cases, they've hired an agency. In others, they've hired an in-house marketing manager. So the question is, why isn't our marketing working?
And honestly, the answer might surprise you.
You might be doing marketing, but that doesn't mean you have a marketing system. And those two things are not the same.
Welcome to the Growth Minded Marketing Podcast. This is a show for B2B CEOs and marketing leaders who are serious about growing their business and want to do it the right way. I'm AnnieLaurie Walters.
And I'm Steve Phipps, the CEO and founder of Wayfind Marketing. In every episode, we dig into real conversations around marketing strategy, what works, what doesn't, and what most business owners and leaders are getting wrong without realizing it.
Today's topic is honestly one of the most foundational conversations that we can have on this show. We're talking about what a marketing system actually is, not marketing tactics, not campaigns, a system. And Steve, I know you're fired up about this one.
Absolutely. And it's because the distinction between having marketing activity and a marketing operating system is the difference between companies that grow consistently and the companies that get stuck on the hamster wheel. And this is something that I talk about regularly.
So, Steve, let's start with the problem itself because I think a lot of people listening already feel it. Paint the picture of a company that doesn't have a marketing system. What does that actually look like?
Well, I can paint this one quickly because I've seen this and experienced it with clients scores of times. A typical scenario is you have a CEO and their company's doing anywhere between 5 and 10 million a year. So in this case, we'll say it's a service-based company. They have technology services or maybe some sort of financial or accounting services. Their business is growing and things are going reasonably well, but they're saying to me, we're doing a lot of this marketing stuff, or in some cases, we want to do the marketing stuff, but we don't know what's working. We can't draw a clear line between our activity and our results. And what they're not saying out loud, but what they're thinking is, hey, we're spending real money on this, but we don't know if it's working. And as a CEO, that's a hard spot to sit in.
Yeah, I bet a lot of people just nodded their heads to that.
And so if you look at what they're actually doing, in some cases, they have a website that looks okay. Sometimes it's been redone recently. They might be active on LinkedIn because they heard somewhere that's where they should be. They might even be sending out email newsletters, and in some cases, they've hired an agency. They might be running some ads, or they might be doing some search engine optimization. And in some cases, they might have somebody in-house who's even writing some articles. So they get this mishmash of marketing activities, and these activities are isolated. Everything's on its own island. And so you get this disconnected marketing activity.
So there's no thread running through it to connect it all.
Exactly. There's no thread. The website talks about the company differently than the sales deck. The LinkedIn posts are, based on whatever somebody felt inspired to post that week. The agency that's doing SEO, they're doing their thing over here, but they're disconnected from the sales and the questions that the prospects are actually asking. And so you have all of this activity and it feels good at some point because you're seeing metrics, you're seeing numbers. But at the end of the day, it's expensive, it's exhausting, and it's just disconnected activity.
And I'm guessing when you ask what's working, nobody really has a confident answer because nothing's really working.
Well, you're right. And it's hard to answer that question. And usually there's not anybody on the team who is owning all of these things. And so nobody really knows the answer. And if you're a growth oriented leader, that's really frustrating. You're stewarding your business and you know that marketing matters. So you're investing in it. But if you don't know what's working, that's a really bad feeling. The good news is that's fixable.
So, what's the root cause? What's actually missing when you see the pattern?
There's a variety of different things that can influence and impact that. But the most consistent root cause that I see is they've gone to tactics before they went to strategy. And it's an expensive mistake, especially in B2B marketing, but it's an easy mistake to make. And so this isn't the fault of anybody. It's just this is sort of how it works quite often. They go to execution. Maybe it's the agency. You have the ads. And again, depending on context, you've self-educated. We should be doing this piece. We should be doing this over here. So we've got somebody doing SEO. We have somebody doing ads. We have somebody on our team who's doing social media. Find the Gen Z because they're active on social media, so they can do a good job of our social media. And they never ask the foundational questions. It's left to assumption. Who exactly are you trying to reach? What are the problems that they're trying to solve? What does their buyer journey actually look like? What are the steps involved? And how do all these things work together, from reaching somebody for the very first time, somebody who's never heard of you, all the way through building trust and credibility until there's a signed agreement? There's a lot that happens in there. And when it's left to chance, you get this disconnected marketing that rarely gets the results that the CEO is looking for.
I like to cook, and it kind of reminds me of, you buy all these ingredients that go in a dessert, but you don't know what dessert you're making yet. So you might have all these great ingredients, but you can make cookies, you can make a cake, you can do a lot of things, but you don't know and you haven't decided what you're actually doing with all the ingredients that you have.
Well, my wife and I like to watch the Great British Baking Show, and sometimes they do these blind challenges where all of the cooks and the bakers have a very specific thing that they've been given, but they're given the ingredients, but they don't always know the proportions. And so they're having to figure out, they have some guidance, but they don't know how much of the flour do I use? How many eggs? They have to figure it out. And so that's a great analogy. You might have fantastic ingredients. So your content might be really good. You might have a really nice looking website. Maybe you've got a fantastic sales team, but without having a recipe, without having something that brings it all together and holds it all together over the course of time, really it just comes down to hoping and wishing. And as we say a lot, hope is not a strategy.
Yeah, write that one down, folks. Hope is not a strategy. So, what does it actually look like when a company does have a marketing system? What changes?
So when I talk about a marketing system, I'm gonna borrow, some of our listeners are going to be familiar with EOS. It's the Entrepreneurial Operating System. It's based on the book Traction by Gino Wickman. A system gives you structure. It shows you how all the pieces, in this case of marketing, fit together. EOS is for running your entire business. When I'm talking about a marketing system, it's that same type of structure. It's the tools, it's the systems, it's the processes, it's the frameworks, it's the organization, it's the direction, the strategy, the plans, all of these things working together. And just like EOS runs on a 90-day cadence of planning out your rocks, identifying the issues, a good marketing system is going to have a similar type of cadence where you're identifying priorities, adjusting based on what's happening, what's working, what's not, what's changing in the marketplace, how is technology influencing all of these things, so that everybody is operating towards something. So now SEO is working in tandem with the content being created, and there's alignment with what's on social media. So we're saying the same things across the various channels, and it breaks down a lot of those barriers. And another key part, especially because we do a lot of work in the B2B space, is getting marketing and sales and company leadership together consistently so that there's conversation and we don't have everybody functioning in their silos, because that's a breakdown and that's very common. So a marketing system gives you a variety of things. It gives you a toolkit so that you can run marketing in a way that is consistent, principle-based, and it allows you to scale for the long run.
So, Steve, this all sounds really great, and it might be a little bit of a shift in thinking for some people, but tell me, what do you think is the biggest benefit to running your marketing like a system?
If you're running the system, it means you're paying attention to the metrics And it starts to improve itself over the course of time because you're developing a rhythm, you're developing a cadence. And marketing isn't just that thing that somebody's doing from the hip, but there's a structure to it. And really, one of the things that's really important to keep in mind here is that a marketing system isn't a one-time thing, it doesn't stop. And that really creates a fundamental difference between a campaign and a system. A campaign has a start date, an end date. A system it's an ongoing operating rhythm. And so that's why I like the phrasing of a marketing operating system. Like this is operational. Yes, it's tactical, but it gives structure to it. And whereas a campaign a lot of times is time bound and a lot of times it's linked to a specific ad budget, at some point that stops. That's going to change based on seasonality and what's going on in the marketplace. Whereas the system, that keeps going. It doesn't just stop because somebody leaves the team because we're involving multiple people. It just keeps running.
And I think that's where a lot of people may get a little hung up on all of it is that they think about marketing like a campaign, not as a system that once it's set up right and everything's fueled the right way, it kind of just works itself.
And so I think part of what underlies that one is the approach is we're going to project manage this and we're doing it at a micro level because there's not this overall comprehensive strategy. And a couple of things that I see that underlies that one is most CEOs that I interact with might be familiar with marketing, but if they've not come out of a marketing background, they're not the ones who have the capacity or the bandwidth to build out a strategic marketing plan. And so that responsibility either is assumed when a marketing manager comes on, and now often that person is tactical, or it's assumed that the agency that's brought on will build that out. And in some cases, they can and they will. There are some really great B2B agencies out there that will build a solid strategy. But oftentimes, what ends up happening is, well, campaign, that's easy to do. And easy being subjective, but it's clear what we need to do. I can do that in the next 30, 60 days. I can read some articles. Claude or GPT can help me put together some ideas. So marketing lives there because that's more manageable. But the problem is every time the campaign ends, you start a new one, you're retooling, you're figuring out your messaging. And again, there's not a benchmark to go back to that is kind of creating the structure overall. And you're not getting compounding results from that start-stop approach. Momentum, scalability requires consistency over time. And so it's not really a marketing thing, it's a physics thing. You want to get the momentum going and maintain it, get the flywheel spinning.
I've heard you say that tactics are an expense, but a system is an investment. Can you explain that?
So I think this reframe is helpful for business owners, especially. When you run a campaign, you spend the money, you get some results, hopefully, and the campaign ends and the results go away. So in that regard, it's an expense. Whereas when you are building this library of content, you're educating buyers, your sales team is using this content, it's more of a capital investment. You're building a library of assets. And so those things don't disappear. It's not that you just do one and not the other. It's something that works together. But those types of investments are creating content that work for you around the clock. And, a good example of an investment is building a website that is functioning as a salesperson. You're equipping it with the information that your buyers are looking for. It's not just a static brochure. And so having a marketing system that's built on a framework or built on frameworks that ultimately are about educating the buyer makes your website a tremendous asset that you've invested in as opposed to an expense that's just taking up space online.
That's a really useful way to think about it. Now that we know what a system is, if I'm a business owner and I want to understand what actually goes into the system, what are the building blocks?
The way that I would define a system is accounting for 5 core components. Number 1 is strategy, 2 is your website, 3 is content, 4 is sales alignment, and 5 is reporting. So you can think about these as being 5 parts of the engine. You take one out and your engine's not going to work the way that it's supposed to. Every single piece of this matters.
So let's just go through them one by one. Start with strategy.
Strategy is the foundation. So again, if you're thinking about your system, this is the framework within your system that helps you identify the flow of your activities. And so strategy is absolutely critical. Without it, nothing else works properly. And I'm not just talking about our goal is to grow 20%. Strategy gets into defining who is your audience, who are you clearly trying to reach, and getting that defined and tight. What problems do you solve? How do you solve it differently than your competitors? What does the buying journey look like? What are the steps they take, the questions they ask? Where are they going to get that information? What does success look like? How do you know it's successful? You've got to answer those types of questions and more before you start spending on execution.
And oftentimes, I think a lot of companies might just skip that part entirely.
They do. They go straight to tactics. And oftentimes it's because it's assumed that everybody knows who the target audience is. But if you were to ask the salesperson and the CEO to describe who their ideal customer is, you're going to get different descriptions. If you were to ask them how they communicate their value proposition to the buyer, you're going to get two different answers. And so what a lot of companies do, because it's easy, is they hire an agency, they launch ads, and they start posting. And you know what? In some cases, people are going to see results. But especially in these spaces where there's more complexity to it, oftentimes 6 months from now, they're looking around the room trying to figure out, why isn't this working? Well, it's not working because it was never anchored to a strategy. You're just building it on sand, and strategy first isn't optional.
Okay, strategy is the foundation. Now, what's next?
What's next is the website. This is your digital foundation. This is your online presence. This is, or should be, your 24/7 salesperson who is going to educate your buyers, build trust, and help qualified folks move forward. And I want to be super direct here, because I find that companies either over index on the website and think that's all of marketing, or they under index it, they undervalue it and put it on the back burner. And so the truth is, for a B2B service-based company, your website it's a hub of the marketing system, because it's where your buyers are going to go to get educated. Or nowadays, it's where AI is going to come on their behalf to get educated about your company. All the other components are going to connect and link back to it at some point.
Okay, that all makes a lot of sense. But why is the website a hub? Like, what specifically makes it a hub?
Well, because typically it's going to touch everything. Your content, your social media at some point is going to drive traffic to it. Your ads, if you're running those, you're going to send people. If people are referring you, people are going to end up at your website. And especially in the space of referrals, people want to go and find out who you are. They want to learn about your business before they call you. And we know today that most of the research buyers do, in some cases, up to 80% of the research in the buyer's journey happens before they reach out to a company, before they ever talk to a salesperson. So your website is critical. And one of the things that we always encourage our clients to do is have content that your sales team can use. So you're sending prospects there to read articles, to watch videos. Again, we have all of these touch points that go back to the website. So it needs to clearly communicate who you are, who you serve, why you're the right choice, always positioning your buyer as the hero, not your brand. And then every other piece of your marketing is working from there.
I think a lot of people want a website that looks nice, and that's the priority. And they kind of just let it end at looking nice or looking cool or whatever bells and whistles that appeal to them. But a website doing its job has a much deeper meaning. It means earning the trust of the people who are on your website. Talk a little bit more about that.
Oh, absolutely. And especially for the clients we work with, they're not just selling a widget, selling expertise, judgment, outcomes. And so a buyer who lands on your website needs to immediately feel that you understand their problem and that they believe that you can solve it. And if that doesn't happen in the first 10 to 15 seconds, it doesn't matter how good your service actually is. The sale's going to start on the website. It either starts well or it starts badly.
We've talked about this a lot in other podcasts, but you make the point about, they need to know right away. Give them a quick tip on how they can test their website to see if it clearly communicates what they're trying to convey to their customers.
So the key thing here is you've got to view your website as your buyer. So if you're having difficulty with that, have somebody that doesn't know what your company does go to your website and see if they can answer these 3 questions in the first 10 seconds. What do you do? Why does it matter to me? What do I do next? If they can't answer those 3 questions in the first 10 seconds, you're losing people because they don't have clarity. They have confusion, and that shuts the brain down. They're going to go where they can understand it.
That's a great tip. Thank you, Steve. And we'll link some other resources that will help you evaluate the effectiveness of your website and to know whether or not it is doing its job. We'll link some of those in the show notes, more resources for you. Okay. So we've got strategy, we've got a website. Steve, walk me through component number 3.
So now we're talking about content. So strategy, website, and content. And that's an overused term, content marketing. But here, what I want you to understand is what it does inside of a system, because it's a lot more than just posting on LinkedIn or the occasional blog. In our world, content is how you demonstrate your expertise. It's how you answer your buyer's questions. And ultimately, it's building trust. And a key part of it is it helps your buyers qualify or disqualify themselves. And that creates a lot of efficiency for your sales team. And so, again, your content's going to be on your website, which is why your website is so important. But ultimately, the goal is you want to become the most trusted voice in your industry.
I love that phrase, the most trusted voice in your industry. What's that mean?
Well, think about your buying behavior when you're the one who is in buying mode. So think about something recently where you were researching. You're going to read articles. You're going to go to AI for summaries. You're going to watch things. You're looking for someone who understands your situation. They have an unbiased perspective because let's face it, everybody, we can sniff out BS. You sniff it out when you're the customer. Your buyers are going to sniff it out. And so what great content does is it educates your buyer before your sales team's ever having a conversation. It's going to pre-qualify them if it's done correctly. It can help address objections. And so it's building trust. It's creating a relationship before there ever actually is a relationship. In a lot of cases, your best prospects, they've been consuming a lot of your content for weeks in some cases, if not longer, before they ever reach out.
And how does AI search the importance of content? Does content play a bigger role or a different role? Tell us about that.
Well, it's an enormous role right now. And if you were to go ask one of the AI tools, Perplexity, Gemini, ChatGPT, Claude, take your pick. What's the best accounting firm for professional service companies? Well, how does that AI decide who to recommend? Because AI is built to function like a human. It's looking for trust, authority. It's looking for content that actually answers people's questions without being a complete sales pitch. And so it's going to surface that information. It's not just looking at your website, it's looking across the web. So if you don't have that content that's answering those questions, your site's going to be invisible to AI. And more people are using that to gather their information to filter out their short list before they ever start going to the websites themselves. And in some cases, the rules haven't necessarily changed. It's just accelerated significantly.
Okay, we've got strategy, we've got website, we've got content. What's the 4th thing we need in our system?
Sales alignment. And again, because we do a lot of work with B2B, I see this one left out probably more than the others. And it's really costly. Marketing and sales need to work together. Even in sales-led organizations, marketing shouldn't be thought of as just, somebody over there that makes some nice PowerPoint decks, or maybe they do some articles on occasion. Like marketing and sales need to be working together so that they're driving revenue. And the whole point of what we're trying to build here is so that the sales team has better conversations with more qualified prospects and close more deals. And if marketing and sales aren't connected, that's not going to happen because marketing is disconnected from what sales is encountering. Whereas when sales is helping marketing understand what are the questions that buyers are asking, what are the tools and the resources that they need, what disqualifies a prospect. When marketing and sales are on the same page, they can create content that helps drive leads, but they're also creating content that sales can then use in the sales process. So again, it's more of a hand in glove type relationship as opposed to marketing tosses things over to sales, grumbles about it and tosses it back. Marketing tries to do better, etc.
So, someone listening who might be on a sales team, might be on the marketing team, what are some questions they can ask themselves to know if they're aligned?
Number one, when was the last time sales and marketing met and actually had a conversation around what questions the buyers are asking? Because a lot of times what happens is it's transactional meetings. There's no planning. There's no having a conversation about the type of content that's needed. So I would say that's a good one. Another one is, I would say this is a good question for the CEO to ask. And that is, how does marketing describe what you do? How does sales describe what you do? In other words, what are the messages that each is communicating? Because 9 times out of 10, it's different. So marketing is saying one thing on the website, sales is saying another thing. And so you get this disconnect. So those would be a couple of starting places to try to get a sense of whether sales and marketing are working together or they're disconnected. And another one is, how often are marketing and sales frustrated with each other? And part of the mindset is viewing sales and marketing as parts of the same team rather than as separate roles and functions. Yes, they have specific things that each does, but when those folks are working together and they see themselves as one collective team, that can shift the dynamic.
Okay, so let's cover the last one. It's reporting. And I think that reporting can get really tricky, right? Like sometimes you're tracking the wrong things, sometimes you're not tracking anything at all, sometimes your numbers aren't giving you the whole story. Tell us about reporting. What do we need to have in place for our marketing system as it pertains to reporting specifically?
Yeah. So when we're talking about reporting, think about this as the metrics on your dashboard. And this is how you're learning. This is how you understand what's working and what's not. And as data driven as marketing can be, there's still an art to it where we're trying to change human behavior. We're trying to guide people. So it's not always cut and dry with what's working and what doesn't. Most companies have some form of analytics, Google Analytics or something different, maybe tracking in HubSpot or Salesforce, whatever tools they're using. But a lot of times it's the wrong metrics. They're tracking vanity metrics. They're looking at things that indicate activity, but they're not connected to the end result. Those numbers have a place, and sometimes they can feel good. But really what you want to know is, where is your traffic coming from? Where are your leads coming from? How are they finding you? Are those folks converting? Are they converting into conversations? Are they converting into opportunities? Are they ultimately converting into clients? How long does each of those steps take? What are the conversion rates? Because those are the metrics that matter. And then you can put dollars to those to start to measure what your ROI looks like, not only at large, but breaking it down to the individual channel.
So reporting closes the loop and it keeps the system moving and improving. Is that the idea?
Yeah, exactly. And again, it's like we said earlier, the system's ongoing. So it's not finished. We get into this cadence, we get into this rhythm of you plan, you develop your strategy. What does execution look like? You execute, then you evaluate what's working, what's not. And then you make those adjustments. That's what makes a marketing system a living thing. It's not just a static plan. And when you start to see this build over the course of, again, this is a longer term perspective. So when you start to see this over the course of 18, 24, 36 months, that's where you start to see a lot of value because now you have all these things working together for sustained growth. Let me give you a real world example here. So, I'm actually thinking of one of our clients. They're a technology-based company that provides services to Fortune 500 and Fortune 2000, if there was such a thing, type companies. And they've been growing year over year, 20% year over year. And a lot of that is because over the last several years, we've worked with them to develop a more strategically focused system where we're executing across the board. Things are now connected. And so they've seen an increase not only in their traffic, but their name recognition has increased. So they're getting a seat at the table with what had previously been the big competitors in their industry. But again, they were committed to the long-term growth, recognizing that the investments that they were making initially were going to take time to see the fruit of that, and they have.
So let's make this really practical for everyone listening. If I'm a CEO or a marketing leader and I want to know honestly, do I have a marketing system or do I just have marketing activity? What should I be asking myself?
So I suspect by now, folks listening probably have a good sense of whether they have a marketing system or not. But either way, here are 4 questions that I think you will find helpful as you think through what you need in order to grow and scale your company for the long run. And so if you can answer yes to all 4 of these, then it sounds like you probably have a solid foundation. If you're answering no to these, then this will at least give you some insight into the gap. All right. So question number 1, do you have a written marketing strategy tied to your business goals and something that's reviewed on a regular basis, something that you're going back to at least quarterly? Now, this is not just tactics. Tactics are a part of this. Budget is a part of this. But this is clearly answering the question, who are we reaching? What are we saying? How are we reaching them and why?
Okay, what's the next one?
Question number 2, is your website actively, consistently generating qualified leads? Not just traffic, but qualified leads. And if it's just been sitting there and it's not, we've had past clients who they'd written some really great articles, generated a lot of traffic, but it wasn't their audience. And so they weren't getting leads.
That's the real gut check question right there from my perspective. But tell us about the third one? What's the third question they should ask?
Does your sales team regularly use marketing content in their process? Do they have things that they're giving that they send to their prospects? Are they referring to content in recent sales conversations? So I know I just gave you multiple questions there, but the essence of it is, are they using content that marketing has created for them regularly? And if they're
And,
not, then there's a gap.
and the last question?
Yeah. Can you clearly explain what's working? Not just a guess or a hunch, but can you look at your marketing and say with confidence that you know what's driving qualified leads?
So these questions might make some people a little uncomfortable, but it's uncomfortable in the best possible way.
Absolutely. I mean, that's the point. Because when people just have this vague idea of we need more marketing or there's something not quite right with our marketing, you can't act on that because it's undefined. But when you ask these types of questions, you start to understand what's actually going on. Is it a strategy problem? Is it a website? Is there sales alignment? Is it we're not evaluating? Maybe it's all the above. This at least gives you some starting points.
And Steve, in your experience, would you say this is a pretty typical problem that businesses have?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I would say most companies, as they're growing and scaling, they go through this phase of trying to figure marketing out. And that often means trying some things out. Maybe it's hiring an agency, maybe it's trying somebody in-house, maybe it's some combination and having to kind of go through it and figure out what's working and what's not. But a lot of folks aren't talking about a marketing system per se. They're talking about campaigns or they're talking about tactics, but not something that puts it all together.
And that thing is strategy first.
Absolutely. Strategy first, every time.
Steve, this has been such a good conversation. But before we close, if someone's listening and they're ready to take action right now, what's the next step they should take?
If you're listening and you realize we don't have a system, here's the first step. Take 90 minutes, sometime within the next week, sit down with your leadership team and answer one question. Who exactly are we trying to reach? And what's the problem that we solve for them? Because if you can't answer that, It doesn't matter all the other things. That is your key question. So that way you understand who you're trying to reach, what type of content to create, what needs to be on the website, etc. Everything else gets built on this. Strategy first, tactics informed by the strategy. That is the way to build something that actually compounds.
I love it. And for folks who want to learn more about how Wayfind Marketing approaches this, where should they go?
Head over to wayfindmarketing.com. You'll find there in our Learning Center an article that was inspired by today's episode. We'll link to it in the show notes. And there you can learn more about how we work, our marketing system, and whether or not we might be a fit for where you are right now. We're not the right fit for a lot of companies, but for growth-driven B2B companies, service companies, we are usually a really good fit. And we work with people two different ways. One is for folks that have an in-house marketing person and are trying to give them structure, trying to give them training. We provide coaching. And that also includes meeting with the CEO, meeting with the sales team, so that we're building that revenue team in the context of a marketing system. Now, for those that don't want to have an in-house team, we can become that outsourced team for you, where we run the marketing. We work with you to build the strategy, take care of the website, and then we execute the plan for you, meet with you regularly so that we're following that 90-day cadence.
Thanks, Steve. This has been a really informative episode today. Really impacted a lot for us. If this episode hit home for you, share it. Send it to your leadership team. If you have one person in your company who needs to hear it, send it to them today. And don't forget to like and follow our podcast wherever you enjoy listening to podcasts, and you will always be notified when we have a new episode.
Thank you so much for joining us today on the Growth Minded Marketing Podcast. We will see y'all next time.